All right, here we go. We're got another worksheet to do, and today's might be the easiest one that you've done out of all of them so far. All right, we'll see. All right, it's called combining like terms. So everybody listen now. Let's stop talking, please. Let's stop talking, please. Shh. Nope. Take care of it another time. Let's do this some other time too, okay? No, just cut it and then you're done. All right, you got the worksheet in front of you. We're going to do a few of these together, but let's just talk about it first, okay? It's called combining like terms. You can only add like terms. Here's something that I've heard other teachers say, and I say it every once in a while myself. You probably heard this, that you can't add apples and oranges. Anybody ever heard that expression? People say, you can't add apples and oranges. Okay, what do they mean by that? They mean that you can't have... I mean, some people say, well, like if I had 3 apples and 5 oranges, all right, you don't have 8 of like either one of them, do you? All right. Now people say, well, you have 8 pieces of fruit. Yeah, technically that's true. All right. But you don't have either 8 apples or 8 oranges. You can't really add them together. You have to separate them, right? You have to say, I have whatever number I use. I can't even remember now. 3 apples and 5 oranges, whatever I said. I can't remember. All right. Everybody with me on that? So think of combining like terms as you can't add apples and oranges. So you can only add apples to each other. So if I had 3 apples plus 5 apples, what do I have now? 3 apples plus 5 apples. What is that? Okay. How about 8? 3 plus 5 is 8. It's not 7. So you have 8 what? Apples. Okay, everybody see that? So you have 8 A's. So if I have 3 A's plus 5 A's, you have 8 A's. You can only add like terms. That's what a like term is. The number out in front can be different. Obviously, the 3 and the 5 are different. Okay, but the variable, the term, that's what they mean by the term. Okay, the variable, the letter, has to be the same. So the number out in front can be different. It just tells you how many of those things that you have. All right, and these are the things that you have right there. In this case, we'll call them apples. It doesn't matter. It's just an A. It's a variable. It stands for a number. If I have 3 of them plus 5 of them, I got 8 of them. That's what like terms are. What if I had this? What if I had 3A plus 5B? Can I add those together? No, I can't, because I don't have like terms. Because this has A, this has B. They're not like terms. I can't add them together. The only thing I can do is just leave it the way it is. That's it. Everybody with me? Sometimes they don't just have one letter. Sometimes they'll have a combination of letters. I don't know if they're doing that. Let me check this worksheet out. Yeah, this worksheet's a little more simplified, but I'll just go a step further. All right, because on this worksheet, you're not going to have this, but later on, you might have something like this, especially when you take Algebra 2 for sure. What if I had this? What if I had 3xy plus 5xy? That's right. That's it. Okay. So what is your term? What is the term? Xy, because those are your variables. They have to be exactly the same. So that would give you 8 what? Xy. Yeah.
I have a question. So if you do 11r minus 12r, it's just subtracting.
So you could do it watch. What if I had this? Let's go back. Let's do x. What if I had 5x minus 7x? Is that 2? It's negative 2, because 5 minus 7 is negative 2. And then you just put the term next to it. So you just add the numbers that are out in front, and they have a special name. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, the numbers out in front, you just add those together. It's 5 minus 7. 5 minus 7 is negative 2. And then you just put whatever the term is. What is our term? It's just x, so that would be negative 2x. The number out in front, they have a name for it, and we're going to refer to it every once in a while. Probably not a ton in geometry. In algebra, we'll refer to it a lot, but we call it the coefficient. Write that word down just in case you ever see it again. All right, so the number that's out in front, the number that tells you how many of those terms you have, that's called the coefficient. Okay, this is your variable or your term, and you got to have the same terms. You got to combine like terms. The coefficients can be different. All right, again, what does it tell you? It just tells you how many of those things you have. Okay, but the variables have to be the same. What if you had this? What if you had that 3xy again, and then you had plus 2x minus 3y? What could you do here?
Leave it.
Just leave it. Why?
They're not the same.
Because there's no like terms. This has xy, but you're looking at this and you might think, I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you look at this and you're like, well, this has an x, so I should be able to add this to this because it has an x. But what's the whole term for this thing right here? It's xy. Does this have an x and a y in it? No, so it's not a like term. Even though they share a couple things that are in common, right? Or one thing is in common, the x's, it's got to be exactly the same, all right? So you can't do anything with that. There's nothing you can do. Everybody with me? Joe.
So you write negative r.
You want me to write that?
Yeah, negative r.
Which number are you looking at?
5.
So negative 2x? Why'd you say r?
No.
Oh, 5. I'm sorry. I was looking at 6. Sorry. Negative r minus 10r, right? Okay, so this is number 5. All right. So how do you do this? What's our coefficient? Again, what's the coefficient? The coefficient is what? The number what? Out in front. Everybody see that? So what's the coefficient of this term right here? No, I'm sorry, this one right here. That's a 5. What's the coefficient of that one right there? Okay, it's a 7. What's the coefficient of this term right here? That's a 3. What's the coefficient of that? It's a 5. Better turn it off. You better turn it off. Don't check it, just turn it off. So what's the coefficient to this? It's a 1. It's a negative 1, though. Okay, it's a minus out in front. So what's always in front of any variable? A 1, that's right. Like an x. What's the coefficient of just x? It's 1, because how many x's do I have? I got one of them, right? That's what the coefficient tells you. So what's the coefficient to just negative r? It's negative 1. So how do I add or subtract these? Well, first of all, it's subtraction. So I always turn subtraction into what? Add the what? Add the opposite, right? So I always take subtraction, turn it into what? Talk to me. Addition, right. I do that by adding what? The opposite. So I put a plus a negative. That's the same thing as minus 10r. And now, what are my coefficients? It's negative 1 plus what? Negative 10. What's negative 1 plus negative 10? It's negative, no. They're the same term. They're the same signs. No, they're the same signs. So you add them up and you keep the sign. You add them up, which is 11. You keep the sign, which is a negative. And then you got to stick the variable next to it. What's the variable? It's r. So it's negative 11r. That's how you do that. Yep. Everybody understand that part? Okay, you got to make sure if it doesn't have a number in front of it, there's always a 1. But if it was like a negative x, what's the number in front of it? It's a negative 1. Okay? All right, let's take a look at number 2. So it says 12r minus 8 minus 12. Can I add the 12r to any of these things up here? Well, it's got a 12 and a 12 in common. But the terms have to be in common, right? Not the coefficients, not the regular numbers. Okay, the variables, the letters, all right, the terms have to be exactly the same. So are there any like terms that I can add with the 12r? There's not. So what do I do with that? Just leave it. Just make it 12r. But look at this. This is just a regular number, and this is a regular number. Now, it doesn't have any letters with it, right? But I can still add those together. So how do I do that? Add a line, what? Change sign, or add the opposite. So what's this going to be? Negative 8 plus negative 12. What's that? 10? No. They're the same signs. What do we do? What's the math that we do when you have the same signs? You do what to them? You add them, right. You add them, and I thought you said 10. Sorry. Okay, I thought you said 10. So you add them and you keep the sign. All right. So what's the sign? Negative what? 20. Or minus 20. It's the same thing, right? All right. Since it comes out to negative 20, we put a minus there for the negative, and then we put 20, and that's all we can do. We can't combine them together.
Wait, how is it negative 8 though?
Because it's a minus 8. Minus 8 is the same thing as negative 8. Okay? Because look, you're looking at this. That's what you're looking at. Because you already took the 12R and put it down here, didn't you? So what are you left with? You're just left with negative 8 minus 12. And you're like, oh, I thought it was a minus. But minus and negative are the same thing.
I just thought you would do 8 minus 12 and do 12 minus what you got out of that.
No, because you got to look at the sign before the number, okay? The sign before the number was a minus, right, which means it's a negative. So the sign of this is going to be negative 8. So it's got to be, you got to do it like this, okay? So even though you're right, it's a minus sign, but minus means negative, all right? So if there's a minus there, that means negative 8 or plus negative 8. Plus negative 8 is just negative 8. And you know how to do this part, right? Adeline, change sign. Okay, so now it's negative 8 plus negative 12, which is negative 20. Does that make sense? All right, give me another one that you're looking at and you're like, I'm not really sure. The whole back? Yeah, 3 is a good one to do. Then we'll look at the back. So this is n minus 10 plus 9n minus 3. All right, so this is number 3. So again, we can only add what? Blank, blank. What is it? Add. What's the thing? We can only combine, or we can add what? Like. Come on, talk to me. Anybody here today? Like terms. Thank you. That's the title of this lesson. We can only add what? Like terms. So you could do it a couple ways. Right. This is a 1n. Very good. All right. You could just look at see which ones are like terms. What can I add to the n? Can I add the negative 10 to it? Can I combine them? No. The 9n, you're right. The 1n and the 9n. Now, again, look at the signs before the number. That tells you if you're going to subtract. It tells you you're going to add. It tells you if it was negative. It tells you if it was positive. Okay? So what do I have here? I got 1n. Let's write it all down. Okay? You could do this in your head, but I'm going to write it down. I got 1n, and then what's the 9n? Is it positive or negative? It's plus 9n. Everybody see that? Let's take the regular numbers. Okay, what are my regular numbers? What's this? It's a negative 10 or a minus 10. So make sure that you carry that sign before it with it. Okay, I can't just drop down a 10 and call it plus 10. It's not plus 10, is it? It's a minus 10 because there's a minus in front of it. What's my 3 then going to be? What am I going to write here? Minus 3. So all I did was just rearrange things, didn't I? I just put the n's next to each other, and then I just took the regular numbers. We call those constants when it's just a number sitting there by itself, like 7. 7 is a constant. It's always 7. It never changes. Okay? Is 7x a constant?
Yes.
Why? Remember I said 7. 7 never changes. 7 will always be 7. But what is 7x though? It all depends on what? Right. If it's got a variable, that means it could vary. It could change, right? That's what variable means. It could change. So all depending on what x is, this thing right here could change, correct? 7 will never change. 7's always 7. All right? 7x could change. Just wait till we're done. All right, so let's do this. Let's add these together right here. Those are my like terms. That's easy. What's 1n plus 9n? 10n, that's right. Now this is a little trickier, but we've done it twice already today. So it's a negative 10, right? Because the sign in front of it's negative. So it's a negative 10 minus 3. So what do we do with that minus? Add a line, change sign. Now I've got negative 10 plus negative 3, which gives us negative what? How about 13? Remember, they're the same signs. Same signs, you add them together. When they're the same signs, you add them and you keep the sign. That's why we had a whole worksheet on that stuff.
But it
It's negative 10. it was negative 10 minus 3. We changed it to positive because...
But hold on. At the equation, it would be negative because you said look ahead of it. That's a minus sign. So that's why I flipped
it's
it to
negative
positive.
10 minus 3. There's my negative 10. There's my minus 3.
Yeah. So that.
So we don't want to subtract the two numbers because we don't really have rules for subtraction. Our only rule for subtraction is turning it into an addition problem. All right, so what do? I add a line to make an addition problem, but I also have to do what? It doesn't just stop there, right there, add a line. What do I have to do? Add a line and change the sign. Okay, so negative 10 minus 3 is exactly the same thing as negative 10 plus negative 3. Now, the rule says when you're adding and you have the same sign, the rule says just add the two numbers together, keep the sign of the numbers. What's the sign? It's negative, so it's a minus 13. Okay, just a second. Let me finish this up. Can I go 10 minus 13 here? No, because they're not same like terms. So that's my answer right there. That's how you do that. Neil, which one? 12? Okay. 12 is kind of the same. It's a little bit trickier than that one we just did. So this is n plus 4 minus 9. Tell you what, I will give you 1 minute, 60 seconds to come up with an answer. Okay, ready? Go. I didn't ask you for the answer. I just said I was going to give you a minute to work on it. So wait until a minute's over, and then I'll see what you got. Everybody work on this. Number 12. It's right in front of you. I just wrote it down. Hurry up. Put the time on there. I don't think you did. You guys working on it? You got 15 seconds left. All right, time's up. Here we go. First thing I do is I look at that n. There's no coefficient, right?
Yeah.
Well, there is a coefficient. What is it? It's a 1. Okay, so that's what I would do. If you're not used to doing these, I would always put the 1 there. Once you get used to it, you don't really have to do that. Now, here's something else that at the beginning, you guys are at the beginning, okay, this is what I would do. After a while, you could just kind of look at this and then figure it out in your head. But here's what I would do if I were you. I would write down all the like terms and put them together, okay? I would put all the like terms together. So I put 1n. What's the like term with 1n? It's not just a 5, it's a what? It's a minus 5n, right? It's very important you take the sign before it. All right, so I move those where they're supposed to go, and now I can just do plus 4 minus 9, because they're already together, aren't they? Everybody see that? Now, we got to know our rules. Again, this is a subtraction problem right here. So we can add these together. And you're like, how can I add them? It's minus. Well, I can always take a minus and turn it into an addition. What do? Add a line, change sign, right? So it's 1n plus negative 5n. Now they're different signs. What's the rule when you're adding two numbers and they have different signs? You subtract them, take the sign of the larger number. So what's this going to give you? Negative 4n. All right, it's not just 4n. It's negative 4n. If you don't put the negative, is that enough to get the problem completely wrong? Absolutely. Okay, so you got to put the negative. Okay, what about this? 4 minus 9. Let's do this. It's kind of like what we just did right there. It's a minus problem, so what do? Add a line, change the sign. Now you got different signs. You got a positive 4 and a negative 9. So the rule says you do what? Subtract them. 9 minus 4 is 5, and you take the sign of the bigger number. You got 9 is the bigger number, and it's negative, so it's a negative 5 or a minus 5. Minus 5, negative 5, it's the same thing. You can, but it just doesn't look as nice and neat and clean. But I'll give it to you. Yeah, it's the same thing. You can put plus negative 5. It's just not as clean. Okay, so when you look at the answers, or if I read off an answer to you, you're always going to see it like this, okay? Can you put plus negative 5? Yeah, it just doesn't look as good. So get used to writing it like this. Does that make sense? Is this getting better?
No.
All right, you said the back of it looked kind of tough. So let's try to find one that's a little more difficult than what we've been doing. They got distributive property on this. Let's do that because we just finished doing distributive property. Let's do 21 first. That's the very first distributive one. So 21 is negative 4 plus 7, and then 1 minus 3m. Now, I'm not even going to worry about adding stuff together. Do you remember order of operations? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Remember that? PEMDAS, whatever you want to call it. What do we always do first? We always do parentheses first. But can you add the stuff inside this parentheses? Why not? Because they're not what? They're not like terms. That's what I want to use. They're not like terms. So I can't add the stuff. So what's the next thing I do? Please excuse the multiplication. Is there multiplication here? There is. What's being multiplied? 7 times what's in the parentheses. Good. I like that. 7 times everything in the parentheses. So give me a good math word that we just turned in a worksheet that we worked on Thursday. What do? Give me a good math word for this. Distribute. Very good. So we distribute the 7. Don't worry about the negative 4 right now. Just drop it down. All right? So the negative 4, we'll deal with that in a second. And now we go ahead and distribute the 7. So it's positive 7, positive 1. What's positive 7 times positive 1? It's plus 7. Okay? You got to put the plus there. Don't just stick a 7 there. Make sure you put the plus out in front. Everybody good? Now you're going to win positive 7 times negative 3 and then an m. So we just multiply the coefficients, multiply the numbers, and just stick the m right next to it. So what do you get?
Negative 21.
Very good. It's negative 21 what? M, because you got the m there. Everybody with me? So that's all we've done. We haven't even combined like terms yet. All we've done is multiply that 7 by that parentheses. Now let's take a look at it and see if there's any like terms. Do we have any like terms? Yeah, the negative 4 and the 7. So what's negative 4 plus 7? It's a positive 3. Remember, they're different signs. You're already adding, right? So we didn't have to change, whatever. What do I say? Add a line, change the sign. We didn't have to do that. It's already a plus. So we just subtract them, take the sign of the bigger number. Bigger number is positive, so we keep that positive. And then what do we do with this? Just bring it down, and there's nothing else I can do with that because they're not what? Like terms.
That 21 is negative.
It is. It's a minus 21, which means negative 21.
That's fine.
It is kind of easy, and that's all you can do with it. Does that make sense? All right, let's do another one. Somebody said one. Let's do 23. 23 is a little tricky. So it's negative 2n minus, and then a parentheses, and it's 9 minus 10n. All right, so this is a little weird. First of all, I got parentheses. I always look to see if I can add like terms in the parentheses. Can I? No, that's just a 9. That's got an n with it, so I can't really do anything inside the parentheses. But I can do something, though. Remember we talked about what's the coefficient of just x? What is it?
1.
It's 1. What is the coefficient of negative y? What's the coefficient of that?
1.
It's not a 1. It's a what? It's a negative 1. Okay? So what's being multiplied by this parentheses right here? You got a minus, but what's out in front of that parentheses? It's a 1. It's a 1. 1's being multiplied by anything, correct? Technically, it's a negative 1 because it's minus 1. Because anything, look at this x. When you just have an x by itself, what's being multiplied by that? A 1. What if I had this? What if I had a parentheses and I had x plus y? What's being multiplied by this parentheses? A 1, right. 1's being multiplied by everything. Everything's being multiplied by 1. Agreed? You can always put a 1 in front of something and it's being multiplied because it doesn't change the value of it at all. Everybody see that? So this right here, I put a 1 in front of it, but since this was minus, it's a negative 1. That's why I said it's a little trickier. Let's change colors. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that negative 1. Right here we took that positive 7 and distributed. What are we distributing this time? Not just a 1, but a what? A negative 1. We have to distribute that negative 1 times this and then multiply it by that. You see that? Because this parentheses is being multiplied by this negative 1. So that's why I said it's a little trickier, because you don't really see the 1, but you have to know to put the 1 there. So what do we do with this 2n? Anything? No. So we just drop it down. It's negative 2n. Now, here's where we got to do this. It's negative 1 times 9. What's negative 1 times positive 9? It's negative 9. So it's just minus 9. You see that? Now, here's where you really have to think. It's negative 1. Is it negative 1 times 10? That's right, because there's this minus in front of it. So this really is a negative 10. So it's negative 1 times negative 10. What's a negative times a negative? It's always positive. It doesn't matter which one's the bigger one and all that stuff, okay? It's always positive. So you're going to put a plus, what? 10, whoops, 10n. So all I did is realize that there's a negative 1 in front of that parentheses, and I take that and I distribute it through that parentheses. Negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. Negative 1 times negative 10. Negative times negative is positive, and that's a positive 10. And you got the n there, so you got to put the n with it. Go back and watch this video if I'm going too fast, all right? Stop it, look at it, do the step, try to hear what I'm saying. All right, now we can add like terms.
When the bell rings, all the seniors are going to go to the MTR. When the bell rings, all the seniors are going to go to the MTR. Thank you.
So which ones are like terms? The negative 2n and the what? And the 10n. So those are the ones I'm going to add together. Now you could just do that in your head right now, but since I've been combining them together, let's do that just to kind of show you. So watch, negative 2n. If I want to put all the like terms next to each other, what am I going to put next? Plus 10n, and then what? Minus 9. Again, eventually once you get good at this and you get used to doing this, you're not going to have to put them next to each other, okay? You could just look at it, couldn't you? Negative 2n plus 10n. Yeah, but I like doing this when you're first learning it, okay? So yeah, negative 2n plus 10n is positive 8n. And then you just drop down that negative 9, that minus 9, and there's nothing you can do with that because that doesn't have an n with it, and that does. That's your answer right there. That's probably, well, it's not the hardest one, but it's close to it.
When was that?
That was 23. It's right here.
Wait, on 20,
I'm running out of time.
how would you even do 25? Because it has an A on the empty 6. Can't you not?
That's all right. It's 10 times 6, and then you stick the A on there. So what would that be? 60A.
But I thought you put in.
But that's not adding. You're not adding, okay? Now, here's one thing that they didn't teach you, and they kind of assume that you know. What if I had this? What if I had 3 times 5A? That adding like terms thing is only for addition. For multiplication, watch. These are not like terms, are they? All right? So it's like this. What if I had 5 apples? And this means I have what? 3 groups of 5 apples. How many apples do I have then?
15.
I got 15 apples, right? So what's the rule here? 3 times 5 is 15, and then you just put the A right next to it. Everybody see that? All right, try the rest of them. I've done a good handful for you. And then this is your homework. I gave you a lesson plan thing. It says right on there, doesn't it? On the lesson plans that this is your homework? Yes?
Will we talk about it in class?
Yeah, we'll go over it in class. Okay, so we'll go over this in class tomorrow. But have them finished. Okay, do your best. At least try them. Towards the end, the last 6 of them, the last 5 of them, it's the same idea, but they just add a little extra stuff to it. All right, but you should be able to handle that with what we taught today. All right, get that thing finished, try it,
Custom black plate.
and then have it done for tomorrow.